Ex wrapped up her testimony today after 4 grueling days on the stand.
She might have a lawsuit too.
According to singer Don Richards' testimony, Cassie Ventura was struck by Sean Diddy Combs using eggs in a skillet.
Back to the drugs and the alcohol, man. The drugs and the alcohol, man. And those things that make you do strange things.
Can one silence a courtroom Don? When Richard testified about Diddy's alleged mistreatment of Cassie, everyone unable to speak, prepare yourself for the shocking disclosures that revealed an unthinkable reality.
His ex wrapped up her testimony today after 4 grueling days on the stand. The defense hit her hard during cross-examination, asking her about a stint in rehab for PTSD, a rape allegation, and asking her to read explicit text messages from over the past 15 years. Richard accused
Exposure to sex trafficking and sex. Acts Richard accused Combs of sexual harassment, gender discrimination, and creating a hostile work environment. Additionally, she claimed to have been falsely imprisoned. According to Richard's lawsuit, she was requesting both compensatory and punitive damages, along with additional expenses for the emotional distress, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder she experienced as a result of Combs' claimed actions. Combs has refuted her claims. In September, his attorney informed E! This lawsuit has shocked and disappointed Mr. Combs. Richard's evidence in Combs' trial is currently underway, 8 months after she filed a lawsuit against the rapper, alleging that she endured years of cruel working circumstances, including false incarceration and physical abuse. Mr. Combs regularly met with Ms. Richard in his pants, despite Ms. Richard's protests and repeated requests for him to put on clothing, according to the September lawsuit that E! was able to access. The 41-year-old also claimed in her affidavit that Combs made disparaging comments about her body, asked her to strip down to her knickers, and under the pretense of instructing the stylist, he unexpectedly entered her changing room while she was undressed and touched her without her consent. Dawn Richards' testimony was like a lightning strike in the courtroom. A former member of the female group Diddy Kane, which Diddy founded, Dawn's testimony was among the most crucial during the first week of the trial, since she was not only a former accomplice but also a keen observer of Diddy's inner workings. People anticipated that she might offer some insights, but the information she disclosed stunned everyone in the room. What precisely did Dawn's relationship with Diddy and Cassie was not only business, it was also intensely personal, as she revealed. In her statement regarding Cassie's alleged abuse that silenced an entire courtroom, Cassie, of course, was Diddy's longtime girlfriend. Their relationship may have appeared glamorous from the outside, but Dawn's testimony revealed a much darker reality of what actually transpired behind closed doors. As part of Danny Kane, she worked closely with Diddy, interacting with him and those in his orbit on a daily basis. Her remarks provided background for the years of rumors of abuse that had surrounded Diddy and Cassie's connection. The atmosphere in the courtroom instantly changed as Dawn's turn to testify came. She recounted incidents in which she allegedly saw Diddy lose his temper, making others around him cautious. She claims that Cassie was not spared from these outbursts, as she frequently took the brunt of his rage. Dawn made it apparent that her account was based on her own experiences rather than rumors. She witnessed everything as it happened. Dawn described a particular occurrence in detail, leaving the room in stunned silence. She detailed a dispute in which Diddy got into a fight without providing any quotes, claimed to have yelled at Cassie until her body language revealed the emotional toll his remarks had taken. It wasn't only the yelling though, it was also the threatening tone and the way Diddy supposedly controlled every circumstance to make Cassie feel helpless to protect herself. Dawn said that this particular incident was ingrained in her mind, and that it was one of many times Cassie appeared to be under Diddy's influence. Dawn's testimony was powerful, not only because of what she said, but also because of how she presented it. There were apparently hints of fury in her voice and sorrow, as if she had been holding back from speaking up for years. First-hand accounts like hers can be a strong asset in a trial, according to legal analysts present. Hearing accusations in a broad sense is one thing, but having a witness describe particular incidents they witnessed is quite another. Such testimony makes the accusation seem more plausible to the jury, and Diddy's response was a very different matter. Reporters, in the courtroom characterized Dawn's body language as guarded during her speech, as if he wasn't expecting her to be so forthright. According to reports, he leaned over to his legal team throughout her testimony as his demeanor deteriorated and he moved in his seat. Even though he didn't interrupt, it was obvious that he wasn't happy with the picture Dawn was painting. And for good reason. Her remarks weren't just damaging his carefully manicured public persona. They were also giving Cassie's claims more credibility than they could have ever imagined. However, Dawn's statement that she thought Cassie spent the majority of her time merely trying to survive was the one that really got the jury and the general public to pay attention. These 5 phrases, which encapsulated years of claimed physical and mental abuse that left several people in the courtroom clearly shaken. It was about how Cassie had seemingly lived in a condition of continual fear and loneliness with no obvious way out. Not simply about the arguments or the supposed control Diddy exerted. Dawn's testimony was more than just a piece of proof. It turned out to be a pivotal moment in the trial, with repercussions that would unavoidably affect the jury's future perception of Diddy. Her story connected to the broader story being developed about the alleged abuse, giving another level of complexity to the case that the defense would surely fight to counter. Dawn's words lingered in the air as the first week of the trial came to an end. They weren't just about her memories, they were about bringing attention to a situation that had been kept under wraps for far too long. The courtroom is also anticipating more revelations as more witnesses, including those close to Cassie and Diddy, are expected to testify in the days ahead. Time will tell what happens in this trial. But for now, Dawn's shocking evidence has prepared the ground for what may turn out to be a landmark case in the field of celebrity justice.
If she witnessed, and she's saying that she witnessed a gangbang, which actually we know it as called a train. And she worked on the album, The Train to Paris. And like I heard one of the YouTube, it could be Tistel, say that we didn't know what the train to Paris meant. But now we know that the train to Paris was a train in Scotland. It wasn't a train in Paris, it was a train in Scotland. Only time I have a witness doing something is when 2 guys and 2 girls will go in the room. And that was just regular. And however they did it, whatever they did, that was their business. But he'd gotten bold enough, whereas that he would do that in front of Dawn and other people at a poolside in Scotland. You sure it was Scotland, man?
Dawn, after Cassie concluded her testimony, Richard, who had started working with Sean Diddy Combs while participating in his show Making the Band in 2004, took the stand. Following Danny Kane's breakup, Richard joined Comey's group Diddy Dirty Money on May 16th. According to Richard's testimony on NBC News, she told jurors that she witnessed Comey's hitting Ventura with a skillet full of eggs at his Los Angeles home. In 2009, he came downstairs to inquire where his phone was and he tossed her to the ground. He tried to kick her. She dropped to the earth and physically tried to conceal her head by assuming the fetal position. According to Richard, Comomes not only hit Ventura with a skillet, but also put his arm around her neck and led her upstairs before she heard a glass shattering. Richard continued, "I was scared for her. I was scared to do anything." When a startling piece of evidence, an audio clip of Cassie, was presented, the courtroom drama reached a new level. It purportedly showed Cassie threatening a Diddy colleague. On the tape, claimed to have captured a furious altercation on camera. The mood of the courtroom instantly changed. The recording represented a turning point in the trial because it revealed the emotional responds and threatens to defend herself. The recording demonstrates the extent of their problems, which not only affected their interpersonal relationship, but also attracted other Diddy employees. And it was difficult for jurors and bystanders to overlook that degree of emotional instability, particularly the fear of being exposed. However, why would Cassie be on such a precarious edge, threatening someone connected to Diddy? Experts after the trial suggested that such moments aren't unusual in abusive relationships. Years of manipulation, isolation, and the toll of mental instability. People in these circumstances frequently reach their breaking point and exhibit actions that, although they may appear illogical to others, are actually the result of constant mental and emotional stress. According to one legal observer, the audio further complicated the story that was already being told. In addition to supporting allegations of an unhealthy and violent relationship, it also implied that Cassie was always in fight or flight mode. causing her emotional reactions to become increasingly intense over time. It wasn't a straightforward tape. Cassie's self-defense moment also demonstrated the consequences of allegedly being confined to a tumultuous relationship for years and being controlled. It seemed more like survival than retaliation, and you could almost sense the despair in her voice. The audio painted a complex picture for the jury. It made the accusations against Diddy more serious and had them examine Cassie's emotional state. Was the tape unmistakable evidence of her difficulties? Perhaps not by itself, but in conjunction with Dawn's more vivid picture of a poisonous cycle that few could comprehend was presented by Richard's testimony and other growing stories. Even while the tape had a significant impact, it raised more issues for the court to debate. In order to cast doubt on Cassie's testimony, Diddy's legal team is anticipated to contend that her emotional outburst refutes her assertions and presents an unstable image. It is hardly unexpected that defense teams frequently use this method while defending well-known clients. To be clear, this will not just extend into Cassie's phrases or behaviors from the recording. Rumor has it that the defense will shortly examine more of her background, including her mental health and her dealings with others. But here's the thing, the tape explores the processes that led to the outburst rather than just one instance of rage. For years, Cassie has been positioned as the girlfriend of Diddy, who has been presented as an untouchable figure in the music industry. In the public eye, her function is frequently limited to silence or submission. That recording exposes that facade. It wasn't only hearings in a courtroom, Cassie's rage. They were listening to her fight for control in a relationship where she frequently seemed to have none. What follows could completely change everything. Will further evidence or testimony? Tapes delve more into the facts of their relationship, or will the defense try harder to discredit Cassie? There's no doubt that the jury is currently facing not only a trial, but also a complex tale of emotional consequences and power struggles. And all might change with the next action.
Things that she's gonna have to bring up into the lawsuit, that Diddy stopped the way that she was working and how she could work by the fact that he would change, like you just said. What she would do, bro, he would turn off her mic and don't let her sing songs or don't let her do certain things, a part of the band, when he ain't doing sexual advancements. I don't know what to say about that, brother. All I can say is that, you know, all of it sounds like using his power. He's using his power to get at people that works for him. And when you do that, when they bring you to court, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna lose.
As Cassie puts it, I'm lost without you. She referred to herself as Cece for Cassie Combs, as we now know. She desired to have a kid with him, as we now know. Additionally, jurors listened to an audio clip in which Cassie threatened to murder a Diddy colleague who possessed footage of one of her freak-offs with Diddy. When Cassie was questioned about getting a FaceTime from her now husband while having sex with Diddy, the jurors were taken aback, as evidenced by the raised eyebrows. I believe they're attempting to undermine her credibility as a witness once more. Although the defense team's plan to turn their attention to Cassie's history initially appeared well thought out, it eventually gave the case new aspects they probably weren't expecting. They aimed to undermine Cassie's credibility by drawing attention to her time in treatment, her battle with PTSD, and a rape accusation from her past. In an attempt to undermine her evidence, they sought to portray her as emotionally unstable and untrustworthy, the jury's eyes. However, there were unforeseen implications to their scheme. It depicted a lady coping with severe trauma and institutional manipulation rather than undermining Cassie. After the trial, legal experts noted that this strategy unintentionally increased the perception of weakness. Instead of dismissing Cassie, the defense may have reinforced allegations of emotional control Diddy reportedly exercised over her by bringing up her difficulties, which made it more evident how someone like Diddy could take use of those weaknesses to keep control of their relationship. A major talking point was the revelation of private texts between Cassie and Diddy, one of which said, "I'm lost without you." These texts simply serve to emphasize how complicated and delicate their chemistry truly is, despite the defense's heavy reliance on them to portray her as emotionally dependent and to imply that their relationship throughout Stormy was mutually consenting and consensual. Was according to experts, trauma survivors frequently show attachment to their abusers because they have been tricked into thinking they have no other options. not because their pain didn't exist. These texts were read in court along with defense arguments that Cassie's emotional state prevented her from giving a credible and unambiguous account of what transpired during her relationship with Diddy. According to legal insiders, this strategy frequently challenges a person's entire character in addition to their evidence. Those who survive this type of scrutiny is common for abuse, particularly in cases involving well-known individuals. It's a well-known legal practice to draw attention to contradictions, bring up personal issues, and try to raise enough doubt to influence the public and jury. But in Cassie's case, this method might have done more harm than good for the defense. Rather than creating gaps in her story, it gave more depth to the account of someone who had been subjected to years of manipulation and control. By making Cassie relive and defend these incidents from her history, given their glaring power disparity. During their years together, the defense might have inadvertently brought Diddy's possible manipulation to light further. Numerous observers of the case observed that these disclosures regarding Cassie's personal background and mental state only strengthened the plausibility of her claims. Rather of raising questions about her statements, her experience with PTSD, and her time in treatment were reframed as possible outcomes of being in an abusive, poisonous relationship, rather than as flaws. This particular strategy seemed to raise concerns about the extent to which Cassie's relationship with Diddy was directly responsible for her emotional suffering. The defense may have sought to divert attention from prior testimony and evidence by putting up these arguments, but instead they produced a more complex picture of Cassie as someone attempting to deal with unthinkable situations. If anything, it highlighted how emotionally, psychologically, and perhaps physically confined she might have felt in their relationship. This sudden change in the dynamics of the courtroom is already having an impact on how the jury views the case. These specifics elevate the narrative above simple text messages or isolated instances. It's increasingly obvious that this is a tale of power disparities, patterns of behavior, and the toll they have on individuals involved. Furthermore, the story is only getting more complicated as other witnesses, including former members of Danny Kane and members of Diddy's inner circle, wait to testify. The defense's attempts to undermine Cassie, whether deliberate or not, may have simply highlighted the gravity of her allegations. Testimonies from others who know Diddy and Cassie's connection will probably continue to reveal more details about this already explosive case as the trial goes on.
We're all going to take a disgusting trip to his seedy, awful world. You know, the man has no class. He has no kindness in his dark, dark heart. And he's depraved. That's my opinion. This is a depraved, disgusting individual.
The facts are the facts, the texts are the texts, and I think that the evidence will be clear.
That Ventura had a choice and that she chose to participate in those sexual encounters.
Where she is entertaining other people in the bedroom. He enjoyed having the freak-offs.
She's being asked specifically about the drug use.
She is clearly excited about freak-offs.
Well-known figure in an already dramatic trial. She is coming up to share her personal story of life under Diddy's leadership as another former member of Danny Kane. As Aubrey gets ready to testify, everyone is wondering what she knows and what she has witnessed. Not just her, but also other of Diddy's former co-workers who were involved in both his personal and professional lives are lining up to testify. Every witness contributes a new, increasingly difficult to ignore strand to this developing narrative. It is impossible to overestimate the importance of having several witnesses. The courtroom was already rocked by Don Richards' testimony, which provided a terrifying look of the alleged mistreatment of Cassie. Her remarks made the jury reevaluate Diddy's meticulously cultivated public persona. Now that Aubrey is anticipated to speak, the claimed patterns of toxicity and control may become even more specific. She offers a distinct viewpoint because she worked with Diddy directly during Danny Kane's heyday and probably witnessed what transpired behind the scenes. Because Aubrey has a history of being vocal about the difficulties of working under Diddy, her testimony is particularly important as this trial moves towards not isolated instances, but a possible pattern of behavior. She has spoken out in interviews over the years regarding his difficult management approach with a high-stress setting. Even though she hasn't previously accused him of abuse directly, her willingness to speak up makes her evidence worth paying close attention to. She could provide a convincing picture of years of consistent behavior if she supports any of Cassie and Dawn's allegations. According to legal experts, this is precisely what makes several testimonies so potent. They produce a series of events that make Dawn's evidence more difficult to reject or refute. For instance, they describe specific incidents in which Dawn reportedly witnessed Cassie being manipulated and subjected to Diddy's tantrums. She detailed incidents that clearly shook Cassie, emphasizing how in their relationship, control and pressure seemed to be constant. Just those specifics had a huge influence. The jury will now start to view these accounts as parts of a bigger pattern rather than as separate incidents as a result of someone like Aubrey following up on that. Once a pattern is established, it is nearly impossible to claim that these incidents were isolated mishaps or misunderstandings. The fact that former employees are included just serves to highlight this. These individuals weren't merely members of Diddy's social circle. They were also employed by him, managing his daily affairs. Their testimony may help to fill in some of the gaps and provide further context for the private moments that I've previously detailed in the trial. Were they directly there when the alleged abuse occurred, or were they just indirectly involved because they were told to hide it? Their ability to provide specifics will determine the weight of their remarks, but just their presence begs the question of what they know and why they are speaking out. Now, it is impossible to overlook the impact of having so many witnesses. In Q, according to legal experts, the case against a person increases credibility as more people come forward. Consistent accounts from various individuals support the charges, particularly when witnesses have varying personal viewpoints, such as Cassie and Aubrey, and others as experts, such as the former workers. It makes it more difficult for the defense to raise questions about each individual account, a tactic that loses effectiveness with the number of individuals opposing it. The question that remains is what Aubrey might disclose. In a trial that has already seen many shocking moments, would her evidence be the next one? According to some, she might bring up work dynamics that resemble the personal control Cassie said Diddy had, implying that his actions weren't limited to his personal relationships, but also permeated his business operations. Should this be accurate, it would reinforce the prosecution's presentation of a man who flourished on intimidation and control. The trial is made more urgent by the increasing number of witnesses. It's now about developing a compelling story supported by numerous accounts rather than merely pitting one person's word against another. Diddy, who has already been the subject of severe examination throughout the first week of the trial, is under a lot of pressure because of this. And when more people come forward, it remains to be seen what they will say and how this will change. The cases balance. Aubrey, OD, and the others have the power to make an already challenging trial even more significant. What transpires when they testify will only become clear with time. The trial's first week was an absolute spectacle, and Diddy's reactions to everything become a major source of interest. He attempted to keep up the cool, collected manner that the public has come to identify with him when seated at the defendant's table. But as the trial progressed, the cracks started to appear. Every action, look, and change in his expression in a tense courtroom were closely examined by the jury as well as by everyone else in attendance. What happened when his calm broke is what everyone is talking about. It was said that the courtroom environment was sometimes oppressive, particularly during the testimony and evidence presentations. As Cassie took the stand and described specifics of their connection, Diddy was the center of attention. She described incidents of claimed abuse and control. And when combined with Don Richards' eerie evidence, the charges became much more difficult to dismiss. Diddy, who had initially seemed composed during the trial, became visibly uncomfortable during the more dramatic testimony. Observers noticed how he writhed in his chair while Cassie spoke, his jaw tensing as her remarks formed an unfavorable picture of a guy who had before been invincible. Cassie Diddy appeared to gain some confidence when the defense cross-examined her. It might have seemed that the lines of inquiry focusing on her prior PTSD and rehabilitation issues strengthened his case. However, analysts pointed out that, although Diddy frequently